we have a crisis in the world, tremendous crisis, and also crisis in our consciousness, in us. I see the urgency of change, radical revolution, mutation in the mind. I see it. It is necessary. There is complete quietness of the mind, and that which is silent has vast space. Only then that which is nameless comes into being.
This is Urgency of Change, the Krishnamurti podcast. Space implies a movement, an energy that is boundless like the heavens. In the heavens there is complete order. Where there is vast space, there is order. When there is no space, there is disorder. Hello and welcome to episode 241 of Urgency of Change. Each episode of the Krishnamurti podcast features carefully selected extracts from the archives. The aim is to represent different aspects of Krishnamurti's radical approach to many of the issues and questions we all face in our lives. This week's theme is space. Upcoming themes are memory, care, and not knowing. This is a podcast from Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. Please visit our website at kfoundation.org, where you can find a broad collection of articles and quotes, an introduction and biography, along with a comprehensive index of topics for easy access to texts and recordings. Our online store stocks all available Krishnamurti books and ships worldwide. You can also find our regular quotes and videos on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook at Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review or rating on your podcast app. This helps our visibility. This week's episode on space has 6 sections. This first extract is from Krishnamurti's 6th talk in Madras 1976 and is titled, "We Must Have Space."
We're going to talk about space first, because it's very important. In our consciousness, as you observe it, there is very little space. There is space created by the movement of thought around itself. That is, the space that self-centered activity creates around itself. Have you noticed that? Which is isolation. When you are isolated, you have some little space. Right? I wonder if you are understanding each other. It's very important to understand this question of space. A house is built in space, isn't it? Between two houses or in an acreage and so on. It's built in a space. And inside the house there is space. The rooms, the hall, the space. So there is space outside and there is space inside. And in a crowded city, as most cities are, the space is very limited between human beings. They live in flats or in small houses. And when there is no space, they become violent. This is proven by many experiments I have made, where putting small animals in a very, very, very small space, they destroy each other. So, human beings as well as animals and nature must have space. But in our consciousness, with all the movement that's going on, with our worries, with our ambitions, all that goes on inside you, there's very little space. Have you noticed it? And realizing that, you try to create space. So there is space to grow. There must be space. But culture, as we have our culture, is making us more and more, or less and less, have space in us. Right? Have you noticed this? Or am I talking about something that you haven't noticed at all? Oh goodness, how can one communicate with each other if we don't understand this simple thing? You must have space to grow, like a tree. A child must have space to grow, right? But our consciousness is so crowded with our fears, with our worries, with our ambitions, and so on, that there is very, very little space. Therefore, from our consciousness, every action becomes fragmentary, leads to all kinds of violence, and so on. Right? So, as space is necessary, the space between the actual, what is, and what should be, the ideal, that is space. Space being distance, space being time. This is, I am violent and I will be non-violent. That is, you have a distance there. That is the space there. Right? To cover that, you make an effort. So you need time. But what is, if you observe it very closely, what is limited by thought, and therefore space around it is very small. Are you getting it? No, you are not understanding this. How am I to convey this? So, space is distance, isn't it? Space means increase, grow. Space also means a vast, unlimited, without any boundary. Right? We live in space, physically, and we must have space between us. If we are too close together, we can't see each other. If you have observed of an evening, birds sitting on a telephone wire, they give space between each other very carefully. They're not all together. So we must have space. But we are saying there is no space in our consciousness. And because there is no space there, it has become disorderly. So consciousness is disorder. And to have order, you must have space. You understand? Right. And space implies a movement, an energy which is boundless, like the heavens. In the heavens, there's complete order. Right? Obviously. So, where there is vast space, there is order. When there is no space, there is disorder. Get it? You understand, if you're living in a small room with your wife, with your children, there's going to be irritation, there's going to be quarrels, there's going to be all kinds of words pass between. But if you have large space, you go into the other room when the thing gets too hot. Right? You get the meaning now? Right. So, where there is order, there is space. Where there is disorder, there is no space.
The second extract is from the fourth talk at Rajghat in 1964 and is titled Space Without an Object is Freedom.
Please follow this. This is not some kind of vague, abstract subject which we are talking about. We have to understand this thing called space. If there was no space, you could not be able to see or hear. If you had no space between you and the speaker, then you couldn't see the speaker or hear the words that he's using. There must be space between you and that tree, between you and your wife, between you and your neighbor. And there is. And as man is getting more and more organized, where governments are controlling his thoughts, and where religion has denied his freedom, here they may assert freedom in another world, but freedom of the mind, all religions have denied, but actually, because they have imposed on the mind beliefs, dogmas, rituals, fear. And the more there is the explosion of population as there is in this country and throughout the world, and people are forced to live together more and more in crowded towns, more and more organized, more and more control made efficient. There is less and less space. And space is created, if you observe, by the object as well as without the object. Please, you have to neither accept nor reject, just observe. Because of the object, you sitting there and me sitting here, the object, this object creates space round it. This microphone creates space around it. Otherwise it couldn't exist. So, we only know space because of the object which creates the space. There is the space between the earth and the moon. This space exists because the earth is away from the moon. There is the object, the center, and the observer, which is the center, which is the object, looking out. Man has always sought space outwardly, new frontiers, new countries. And when all the earth has been conquered, explored as it is now, he's inquiring into outer space. the space between the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars, is always going outward, 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 seeking this space. And inwardly, religions, society, his personal tendencies, fears, the family, the circumstances and tensions and pressures of population and so on, have prevented him from finding the space within. And if you have no space, you have no freedom. If the object creates the space only, then the mind is caught within that space which is brought about by the object. And therefore there is no freedom if one once admits or allows or knows that space is created only by the object. That is, as long as there is a center which creates space round it, and there is no other space except the object which creates that space, then there is no freedom for man. Do you understand? The center which is me, the me as well as the me which is the physical as well as the emotional as well as the intellectual, the me, creates that space around itself because the center exists. And because the center exists and creates the space, if that is the only space man can ever know, then there is no freedom at all. And if there is no freedom for man, living here, not abstract freedom, living our daily life, living, going to the office, doing our daily routine, however pleasurable or painful. If there in our daily life there is no freedom, then we are slaves forever. Slaves to environment, slave to all the pressures of existence, slave to every form of social influence. And if the object only creates the space, then there is no freedom. There can be only freedom, obviously, when there is space without the center, without the object. And that's what we are going to inquire this morning. That is, you must have space, otherwise you have no freedom. Even in your little room, however small it is, you must have space to move about, put your things, to do your exercise, to play, do anything in life, you must have space. And we demand this space outward. Better houses, better housing, more playgrounds, forests, woods, trees, going on boats, space outwardly. But inwardly, we never want space. Because our minds refuse space because we are frightened. So, we are going to inquire not abstractly whether it is possible for a mind to be so completely be free and therefore to have space without a center. And it is only that space without a center is freedom. The space is translated by the scientists into as field, electromagnetic field, gravitational field, nuclear field, and so on. We are not talking of field as the scientist knows it, but we are asking the space which is beyond the scientific investigation of fields as he knows it. We are inquiring into something much more human, not merely scientific facts, which has relationship with human thought. So you must first see the problem very clearly, even intellectually, verbally, very clearly. That is, man must have space. Which modern society, with ever exploding population, the atomic fears, wars, threats, force him to go out and out and out, outwardly. They can go to the moon and live on the bottom of the sea for days and days. And we know what space is. We only know space because there is the observer, the center, the object, which creates the space. A piece of furniture creates the space, a wall, a house. And that's the only space you know. A space that you observe with your eyes from the earth when you look out to the moon, to the stars. So we are going to inquire into this problem of space without the object. And only in that space is freedom. That space without the object is freedom. And we are also in inquiring into space and freedom. We are also going to discover for ourselves what is love. Because without love there is no freedom. Love is not sentimentality. Love is not emotionality, emotional states, nor is it devotional. So we are going to find out for ourselves. To find that out, we must create space in the mind. We must empty the mind, obviously, so as to give space. Not space in a limited field of thought, but space without limit. And space within, if we can so divide and say the heart. Space in the mind and in the heart. Otherwise there is no love, no freedom. And without love and freedom, man is doomed. You may live very comfortably in the 15th floor of the skyscraper, or live most miserably in a filthy little village. But you will be doomed unless there is this extraordinary, limitless space within the mind and the heart, within the whole of our being.
The third extract is from Krishnamurti's 9th talk in London, 1961, and is titled Time and Space.
Where does time exist? Not only time by the watch, but the inward time. Where does it exist? Please, this is not a rhetorical question or an argumentative question or a question to stimulate your mind. I'm not trying to stimulate you at all. That's all silly. But I'm asking this because distance, space, time and distance must exist in a state where there is no time at all. That must exist first, and everything else comes into that. Without timelessness, there is no space and distance. We must feel our way into it. Don't please accept it or deny it. I haven't yet communicated to you the feeling of it. So you can't accept it or say no, it's all you're talking nonsense. You see, you exist in space. Without space you would not be. Without space between two words, word has no meaning. After all, music is the space between two notes. And if there was no space, there would be no music. The space is the thing unknown, in which the known exists. But without the known is not. I don't know if I'm conveying it. No, please, this is not just sentimental stuff to be grinned over or agreed with. What we are talking about, I'm going to go on into something else. See, what I want to say is, without death there is no life. But most of us want a life which has continuity, which is time, space. And so, to us, death is a horror to be avoided. And life is something to be prolonged indefinitely through medicine, through doctors, through all kinds of means to prolong it. Or if there is the inevitability of death, at least let's believe in something. That I will continue and you will continue, always in space. So, if we could put it this way, in the womb of the unknown, time and space exist. But without feeling one's way into the unknown, mind becomes a slave to time and space.
The fourth extract is from the sixth talk in Saanen 1983 and is titled Space to Listen.
Do we, each one of us, listen, hear what we say to each other? Or you are talking, you want to tell me something, and I want to tell you something. What you want to tell me becomes much more important than what I want to tell you. So there is this battle going on. You understand? You want to say, you're talking to yourself most of the time, and another comes along, wants to tell you something. You haven't the time or the inclination or the intention to listen, and so you never listen to the other chap. And so there is this constant deafness, a sense of space in deafness, so that we never listen to each other. There is not only the hearing with the ear, but also listening to the meaning of the word, the significance of the word, and also to the sound of the word, the sound, which is very important. When there is sound, there is space. You understand? Otherwise there is no sound. Unless you have space, then only in that space sound can take place. So the art of listening, if one may point out most respectfully, is not only hearing with the ear, but also listening to the sound of the word. The word has a sound. And to listen to that sound, there must be space. But whereas if you listen all the time translating what is being said into your own prejudices, into your own pleasurable or unpleasurable movement process, then you are not listening at all. Is this clear? Can we, this evening or morning, attempt to listen, not only to what the speaker is saying, but also listen to your own reaction to what is being said, not correct your reaction to conform to what is being said. So there is this process going on. The speaker is saying something which you are listening to, and also you are listening to your reactions to what is being said. And give space to the sound that your own reactions are, and also to what is being said. You understand? It means a tremendous attention. Not just get into a kind of trance and go off listening to this marvelous speech, and and it was very nice that morning, it was a very good speech, and it's this, it's that. I was glad I was there. He told me a lot of things which I have not thought about, and all that nonsense. But whereas, if you listen, and in that listening, there is a miracle. The miracle is that you are so completely with the fact of what is being said and listening to that. And listening also to your own responses. It's a simultaneous process. You listen to what is being said and you reaction to what is being said, which is instantaneous, and then listen to the whole sound of it, which means having space. You understand? So, you are giving your whole attention to listening. Am I making this clear? Now, this is an art. Not to be learned by going to a college, passing some degrees that you have learned listening, but to listen to everything, to that river going by, to the birds, to the aeroplane, to your wife or to your husband, which is much more difficult. Because you've got used to each other. You know what she's almost going to say. And she knows very well what you are going to say. After 10 days, after 10 years. So you've shut your hearing altogether. You understand? Here we are asking something entirely different. To learn, not tomorrow, now, as we are sitting there, to learn the art of listening. That is to listen, to be aware of your own responses, and allowing space to the sound of your own beat, and to listen. It's a total process, not separate, but a unitary movement of listening.
The fifth extract is from Krishnamurti's fourth talk in Ojai 1973 and is titled Space in Art.
Art implies, doesn't it, a flowing, melodious manner of space, weight, space, grouping together, and depth. Are there some artists here? I said, the speaker said, a flowing, melodious manner of space, depth, and grouping together of words, sentences, or a painting on a canvas, or a sculpture, or a poem, or literature. Is that right? A melodious, a flowing, melodious manner of space, of depth, of grouping certain things together, trees, people, words, all that is a form of beauty, is a form of art. Do you agree to this at all? That is, if there is no space, if you see something, say a painting, I hope somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. If you see a picture, a painting by the masters, classical masters, or recent ones, really great painters, there's a space, a sense of space. The figures are grouped together in a certain way. There is a certain depth to it in color, in sense of movement, and it must be melodious. And that gives, when you see some of these paintings of landscape, they may paint a little cottage in a field with few trees, but there's space. And there's depth of color, proportion, a sense of harmony, right? And that would be great painting. And one has visited, perhaps as you as a tourist, most of the major museums of the world, and one sees all these great masters from Holland, Italy, England, America, and so on. So we are asking, what is beauty? Is beauty according to a principle, according to certain rules? You follow? Or beauty is something entirely different, though there must be proportion and all the rest of it. When we look at a mountain, there, when you see those mountains, those hills, range after range, blue in the evening, and early morning when the sun touches it, before everything else. When you see that, the reaction is either great silence, you keep quiet. There's space, enormous space between you and that, and beyond. And when you see such marvelous, beautiful mountains, snow-clad, against this blue sky, for an instant you become silent. The very beauty, the very grandeur, the majesty of a mountain makes you absolutely quiet. You can see the shock of her beauty. I hope you're looking at those mountains, not at me. The speaker is not important at all. But what he says may be important and may not be important. But you have to discover for yourself. So when you see something extraordinarily grand, of great height and depth, and then the shock of that beauty drives away for the moment all your problems. There is no self wandering, worrying, talking to itself. There is no entity, the self, the me, looking. At that moment when the self is not, there is great beauty.
The final extract in this episode is from the fourth talk in Ojai 1973 and is titled Space and Order.
Life is a total movement, not fragmented, not broken up as the me and the you. In that, there is no me to experience. I don't know if you see this. Look, the mind is incapable of experiencing something that it does not know. Mind cannot possibly experience the immeasurable. That's a word. But you can give a significance to that word and say, I will experience that state of the immeasurable, higher consciousness and all that business. Who is the experiencer? The experiencer is the past. And you can only recognize the experience in terms of the past. Therefore, you must know it already. Therefore, in meditation, there is no experiencing. Sir, if you do this, you'll climb the highest heavens. So, you have not only to understand this whole movement of daily living, which is part of meditation, and in that, no control whatsoever. So that there is no conflict, no direction. but a life that is immensely energetic, active, real, creative. And also, in meditation, the mind becomes completely quiet, silent. You know, silence has space. And our minds have no space. They're too crowded. Not only with knowledge that we have acquired, but it's so eternally occupied with itself, what it must do, what it must not do, what it must achieve, what it must gain, what others are thinking about it. It is full of knowledge of other people's conclusions and ideas and opinions. So we have very little space in our mind. Have you noticed it? And when you have no space, one of the factors of violence is the lack of space. Right? If you have watched the birds on a telegraph wire of an evening, you will see how they keep space between each other. And in ourselves, we have very little space. And one must have space. And it is part of meditation to come upon this space. Space not invented by thought. Are you following all this? Because when you have space, the mind can function totally. Our brains, may I go into all this? You know, our brains can function, not that I'm a brain expert. I watch my brain very carefully. I spent a lot of days in looking at my brain, watching it. Certain part of the brain can only function efficiently when it has total order. Order there means security. And when the brain has a certain part of the brain has complete security, then it functions logically, sanely, rationally. When there is disorder in the brain, certain part of the brain, then it acts neurotically. So the brain is all the time trying to bring about order. Even though it may find order in neurotic behavior, that also is order, security. I don't know if you follow this. And the space that The brain, with its memory, with its capacity to function orderly, creates the space that is necessary for itself. You observe this in yourself, you'll see it. That is, through dreams. Oh Lord, must I go through all this? Most people dream. I'll be very quick, I have lots. I must get on with it. Most people dream. Dreams are a continuation of our daily life. What you are doing, what you are thinking, what you are, what you are doing daily life, when you sleep, the brain is still active, continuing with what it has been doing. If your life during the day is disorderly, the brain tries to bring order while you are asleep through dreams. That's one of the functions of dreams, to bring order. But whereas if you bring order during the daily life, waking hours, the brain then becomes much more active, not in the sense of bringing about order, because you've already brought order. It becomes much more active. It makes itself, it becomes younger, because it is renewing itself. Come on, sir, are you following all this? And a brain which is completely in order, absolute order, not relative order, has no conflict, and therefore it can move in space. I wonder if you understand all this. So, silence, which is really an extreme form of highest order. You understand this? No, sir, you don't. Don't agree. So silence is not something you contrive, you try to practice or try to become aware. Moment you are aware that you are silent, it is not silence. So, silence is the highest mathematical order. And in that silence, the other parts of the brain which have not been occupied, which have not been active, become totally active. So the brain not being in conflict, not having great space, not created by thought as space, but an actual sense of space. And that space has no border. So thought has no place in this whatsoever. In the describing, as we are doing this, we are employing thought, using the words which thought uses to communicate. But what is described is not the description is not the described. So the mind, with its brain, becomes totally silent. And therefore, of the greatest order. And where there is order, there is vast space. And what lies in this vast space, nobody can tell you. Because it is absolutely indescribable. And anybody, doesn't matter who it is, describes it or tries to achieve it through repeating words and all that kind of silly nonsense, is making something holy, sacred, he is desecrating it. So and this is meditation. And this is part of our daily living. It isn't something you do at odd moments. It is there all the time, bringing order in everything that it is doing. And in this, there is great beauty. Beauty that is not in the hills and the trees or in the museums, in the pictures or in music. Because the thing that is beauty, and therefore love.